Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Bulletproof Selling live stream. My name is Sean Rhodes, and I am the Chief Sales Architect of Bulletproof Selling and author of the book, Bulletproof Selling, a Guide for Systemizing Sales on the Battlefield of Business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, if it's your first time joining us, you need to know that we believe that hope is not a sales strategy. So we are here to increase the performance of salespeople, the teams they have, and the results that those folks are getting by really helping them out with pipeline performance. So we're going to be talking about how to do that. In what way? I don't know, because these are free-flowing conversations that I get to have with my guests. So this weekly Bulletproof Selling series, in case you haven't ever tuned in with us, we get to share insights from the top minds in sales, best-selling authors, speakers, trainers, and of course, those that are actually out there in the field managing salespeople, and folks like my guest today who have made the transition after decades of working for someone else to run their own shop and figure out, hey, how do I really begin to systemize what's working in the world of sales so that I can continue to find success even after a career. Now, my commitment to you is that on every single one of these episodes, we get to build a sales system that you can use no matter the size of your goals or the size of your team. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome into the show Mr. David Shriner-Cahn. David, welcome to Bulletproof Selling, sir.
Thanks so much, Sean. Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, David, you've led an interesting life in your career. You've gone from decades of being an employee to now running your own shop. And while a lot of salespeople that are tuning in and they're sales leaders, they're still working for somebody else. You and I had chatted briefly before the show that, hey, if there's any field in any company that is more entrepreneurial than anything else, it's the field of sales. So I'd love to know kind of how your career went, why you made the transition to get out of, working the 9 to 5 kind of a gig into doing this for yourself, where like a lot of salespeople, you have to eat only the things that you can kill. So walk us through your career path, my man, because it's interesting.
Yeah. So in my case, I was not in sales when I was an
Right?
employee. And I did learn fairly early on that as the owner of my own business, that sales was the most important thing, because without sales, you're not actually running a business. At best, you may have a hobby.
Mm.
Right. So, in my case, I studied engineering. I worked as a chemical engineer for the first few years of my career. Then I went into the not-for-profit sector, and I was in executive roles there for over 20 years. And even though I had a lot of authority in my positions, I still wanted more control. And the way to do that is to have your own business, your own shop, as you describe it. So in
Love it.
2006, I took the leap and I said, I'm starting a consulting business. And of course, people who knew me well said, David, what are you nuts? um, anyway, the rest is history.
And you mentioned that it's that whole jump. Like the rest is history. Now it's all doing great. And I landed on both feet as soon as I started, and it was all roses and daisies, and it's all been heavenly ever since. But I know for a fact that the life of an entrepreneur, just like the life of a salesperson, does come with a fair amount of hard lessons. So question I love to pose to everybody that comes on the show: where do you see salespeople? Because you get to work with them. These folks might be running their own shop, or maybe they're just trying to smash through the plateau of where they're, kind of held at in their career or in their income. But where do you see folks using hope a little more than they should in their sales strategy?
Well, you actually said it in the introduction, Sean. You talked about sales system. The most important thing when it comes to sales, and actually marketing and sales, both, is having a system. And you need to understand what success is for you, what success is for the organization that employs you, and you need to understand how you would know how successful you are, because success is not it's not a destination, it's not an absolute. It's a scale. So you can be more successful or you can be less successful, and there are metrics that will tell you how successful you are. So if you're, like, as an example, in sales, if you're judging your success just based on gross dollars of something being sold, you can track the dollars that you're selling over time. Like how many dollars am I actually closing every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year? That's a pretty simple metric. And then there are lots of other metrics that feed into what's important to a sales system.
So in you get to work with a lot of people that are figuring this out as they go. And obviously they're coming to you for that advice and insight so that you can help them not have to learn every lesson the hard way. When I opened my own business, I recognized, just like you said, hey, sales is going to be critical for me to even keep this thing afloat, to keep the bills paid, to keep the lights on. But yet I knew almost nothing about sales when I started. I was used to selling ideas because of a previous career, but selling an idea and getting people to turn over hard-earned money for something, even if it's a service, there's a bridge that you have to build there for value and what the end state's going to look like and all those things. So I imagine that a new salesperson to any organization is going to be faced with a lot of the same challenges that an entrepreneur is when they first open up their shop. And so walk through me a little bit about what you see the chief challenges of brand new business people, brand new salespeople are these days. Now that we're in this kind of post-COVID environment, virtual and hybrid sales are now a thing, where before I used to have to get in a car and I've done this too, hopped on an airplane, flown across the country for just 1 hour meeting with somebody that ran a company because I thought, hey, that's what you're supposed to do in the world of sales, not knowing really what I was getting myself into. So where do you see new salespeople really make a lot of mistakes? What things do I need to keep my eyes out for if I'm brand new to the world of selling?
If you're brand new, answer this question that we just talked about. What is success to you? And if you are an employee, what is success to your employer?
And to get that clearly defined, yeah.
Clearly defined, as clearly as possible. So, if it's just dollars, then identify what are the dollar targets you have to hit. I suspect there's a lot more to it than that. For as an example, one of the issues that many companies have is they have a mix of clients and customers, and some of them are really great clients and customers, and others not so much. One of the things that I encourage people to do is take a look at your existing mix of clients and plot them out in terms of two variables: how profitable they are to your company, and how I usually describe it as how easy they are to work with, because that really encapsulates a lot. And you'll find that you have some clients that are not so profitable. They're not so easy to work with. They complain a lot. They take up a lot of your time. That's kind of a red flag. So note who they are. There are going to be some that are really great to work with, but may not be so profitable. They're probably keepers. There are some that are profitable, but maybe not so great to work with. They're probably keepers also, at least for now. And then there are those that are both really profitable and great to work with. And those are the ones you want to be clear on who they are so that you can work on getting more of those. And then go back to that first category, the ones that are not so profitable and not so great to work with. Notice who they are and think about how you would actually fire them, which is which is a scary thought for a salesperson or a business owner. But in reality, this is what I found. Every time I go through this exercise with clients, when they identify those red flag clients, those clients often drop off on their own, just by the fact that the business owner realizes who they are. B, sometimes the business owner does actually have to say, you know what, I don't think we're able to provide the kind of value you want. I think you would be better served by doing this instead with somebody else. But anyway, what I have found is inevitably the business picks up better clients very quickly because they're much clearer on who their ideal client is.
And I feel like this is something that a lot of salespeople, it takes them years sometimes to figure it out, because organizations, a lot of sales team don't share, hey, this is our ideal type of client. They'll say, hey, target CEOs in this industry. And that's all that a salesperson might be given. And they have to go source the leads, begin outreach, campaign these folks, get them into conversations, all the things that involve getting to that sales decision. And yet very few companies I've found are taking the time with their junior salespeople to really lay out, from our experience, from the dozens of salespeople that we've had over the years and the hundreds of hours they've spent on the phone and in these deals, these are the types of people that we do the best business with. They're the most profitable. They're the most pleasure to work with because they understand the value of the service we offer. So we do want you to target whoever can bring in revenue at first, to your point. Like, there are 3 subcategories, but here are the folks that we really, think you would be best working with. And here's how to go and find them. So to really prep the junior salespeople for success earlier on, rather than saying, well, it's a wide open field, here's a bow and arrow, see what you can bring down, which I find a lot of sales teams, that's their strategy, if it's a strategy at all. So I'd love to hear from you. If I'm a junior salesperson, how do I begin to ask the more senior people on my team about what you just talked about? Who are the people that are most profitable, best to work with? Is that personality dependent? Is it also a mix of that and what we're selling in our industry, who we're targeting? How do I begin to get a handle on that so I don't have to learn that lesson the hard way?
Sean, you can actually just ask the question of the senior people just the way you described it.
Yeah.
Who are the best people for us to work with? Who's most profitable? Who's easiest to work with? And just see what you hear. And particularly with senior people, if they don't do this exercise regularly, it will be good for them to actually answer the question, and it will be good for you to hear it. And if you're a new salesperson, as you know, we work with a lot of solopreneurs, and they are the salespeople for their own business. Right?
Yeah.
If they don't sell, they don't have a business. One great example is Lorianne Vaughn Speaks, who was a guest on Going Solo. Early on, she was in episode 4. She is somebody who did go from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. She had worked for a woman who was an author and a speaker, and Lorianne kind of did everything for her. Lorianne discovered, although her employer said Lorianne didn't have to worry about her job, she would always have a job, and the employer would always be in business. In fact, when Lorianne had just turned 60, the business owner decided to end the business. And so all of a sudden, Lorianne was out on the street. She started looking for another job and wasn't getting much traction. It started doing some networking, and it ended up picking up some part-time work, which she then discovered was in the same field where the people who were hiring her were authors and speakers. And again, this goes back to understanding what success is and what's important to your customers. She learned from them that they needed somebody like her, but not on a full-time basis. And so what evolved out of that discussion and her listening was Lorianne developing her own business, where she became a go-to resource for authors and speakers, providing writing and social media and other kinds of support, where Lorianne ended up building up her own team of fractional service providers in this area, which turned out to be a great business. Within a year, she was earning 3 times what she had as an employee. And again, this is through something that is really important in sales, which is listening to your ideal target audience. What is it that they need? What is it they want? What is it that they're willing to pay for? What is it they have the resources to pay for? And how do you help them do better in their business, which usually means making more money, or saving time.
Right. Or a combination of all of them.
Or a combination.
And getting really targeted in. I love the way that you phrased it. You were talking about, we need to get people that are both profitable and who we enjoy working with. And as entrepreneurs, we know that life is too short to take on bad money. I know I've made that mistake. I'm sure you have across the course of your entrepreneurial career. You took a deal. It seemed like a good thing at the time, but you realized there were a bunch of red flags early on. And wow, that thing was a time suck. And no, they didn't even get the ROI they were after because they refused to implement for a variety of reasons. Like, all these reasons could come across. So if I'm a salesperson and I really want to enjoy the work that I do, because otherwise I might as well not be in sales. Like, go take a salaried gig for $40K a year with good benefits, but you're in sales because you have ambition, you have drive, you'd like to provide a good quality of life for yourself, your family, the people you care about. Yet you should also look forward to getting to work. And if it's a grind, if you're with people that you hate all day, I mean, whether it's your coworkers on your team or the prospects you're talking to, that's just a miserable life. And I know nobody wants that. So I'd love to build a system around this because I think it'd be valuable for any salesperson to do, or especially a team, of how do we really get down to who are the most profitable customers and who are the best people to work with. And to know that this answer could change over the course of a year. I know for a lot of industries, it changed because of the pandemic. They were found had a great relationship and they loved working with people that they could visit face to face. But when that stopped, suddenly these people wouldn't take calls, they wouldn't answer emails, and they had to go source a whole nother group of people to be their customers. So it definitely is something that's not static for a lifetime. This thing needs to be reassessed. So when we talk about building a sales system here at Bulletproof Selling, especially one as valuable as this, we use this acronym TRIM, which is trimming hope away from our sales strategy, coincidentally. So the T in TRIM is the trigger. Now, the triggering event for any system is either how often I need to do this, or an event happens. We get a new inbound inquiry or a new prospect comes into our world. This is the thing that would then launch this system to figure out, hey, is this the right type of prospect? Is it going to be profitable? And are they going to be a pleasure to work with? Because if the answer to either of those is no, it doesn't mean we have to kick them out of the pipeline, but we really need to take a hard look. Right? If we have a bunch of, A category prospects to pursue and a D category comes in, probably not worth our time. So if you're coaching a sales team in how to do this, would you recommend that they reassess this as a team every week, every quarter? Should it be done on a prospect by prospect basis when that website inquiry comes in? When do I trigger a system to help me understand, is this customer likely going to be profitable and a pleasure to work with?
Yeah, I don't know that you need to do it every day, but if you do this even once a year, I think you'll be
okay
ahead of the curve. Yeah, you could do it more frequently. Maybe you could do it every quarter. I don't think you need to do it more frequently because in all likelihood, your ideal target customer is not going to change that drastically over the course of a year.
Right. Okay, so you recommend it every quarter, but at the very least every year, just to sit down and say, of all the people we have going on, who's the most profitable? And that can, of course, be done just looking at raw numbers, cost of goods and services, ROI to us. That's, a good measure of profit. And then the second piece I think is a little harder to work with, but I feel like it's important to mention in the triggering aspect of this. How do we define who's a pleasure to work with?
Is actually a pretty simple way to do it. I tell clients, just rate them 1 to 5.
Okay.
Five being the easiest to work with and 1 being the opposite.
Awful.
Okay. and you know what? Most people find it pretty easy to rate their clients 1 to 5.
Oh yeah, it actually is when you sit down and you think, is this the person that I would want to have a lunch with every week just because I enjoy their company? I put them at a 5. That they implement, they respect me, they get a lot of value. That's a 5 for me. But somebody that I dread having to pick up the phone to talk to, or when they call, I'm always sending them to voicemail, that's probably a 1. So really easy, hard metrics we can use to figure that out. So that's the T, the trigger. Now, the next thing I want to do is make this process repeatable. Because if we sit down once a year and we just ask the question, hey, it's time to do that exercise that David and Sean talked about, I think we're supposed to figure out who's good to work with and who's profitable. Well, that could, really go off the rails quickly because we could get a lot of side conversations. I want to keep this thing on track. I want to make it a nice, tight system. So what are the steps I need to do in what order to determine, of all the clients that we have, how do I understand who's most profitable and who's the best to work with so that I can go looking for more of those in our subsequent steps of the system?
Right. And also, some of the variables to consider in how frequently you do this and what process you use is the size of your company, how many clients or customers you have, and the stage of development. So if you're in a relatively new business, you're probably going to want to do this fairly frequently till you see some stability. If you have a business that has a lot of recurring revenue clients and you don't have a huge amount of turnover, like for example, if you're an accounting firm, and you do primarily tax returns, you probably have a pretty high retention rate unless you're a lousy accountant, because there's a high pain on the part of customers to change accountants. So they're not likely to change unless there's a real big problem. So if you're in a business like that, I can't imagine you needing to do this more than once a year. If you're in a business where it's very transactional, like for example, if you're a general contractor and you're doing interior renovations for residential customers, the average residential customer, I think, does something like a renovation maybe every 7 years. Right. So it's a very transactional business. You got to have a lot of leads in your pipeline to have success. So you do have a constant flow. And there you might want to look at certainly every quarter, like what has happened this quarter, or maybe even every month. So again, it varies. But what you need to do is you can look back over like the last 12 months of clients, just write down the name of every single client.
Okay.
And so you're going to basically set up a spreadsheet. The first column is the name of the client. Second spreadsheet is profitability. And you could look at it in terms of net income before taxes and depreciation, net income from a client. And then you could also you could have the percent of profitability.
Your cost of goods and services, or your time, like you mentioned before, what kind of time commitment it was. Okay.
Right. So if a client brings in a net of $100,000, but the profit margin is 5%, that's very different than a client that brings in $25,000, but the profit margin is 80%.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Okay. So you like to see like what's the actual dollars, but also what's the profit margin.
All right. So and column 1, client name, column 2, profitability, and then percentage. And then column 3, is that where you would rate them 1 to 5?
No, sorry. So column 2 would be net income. Column 3 would be your profit margin.
Okay.
And then column 4 would be how easy are they to work with, 1 to 5.
Gotcha. Okay, 1 to 5. All right. And so that is very repeatable, because you could use the same spreadsheet year over year and just build that out. If you're part of a larger team, that's something that each salesperson could do on their own, and then amalgamate all of those things, build them forward. And I'll bet if you're a sales leader, and you might have seen this across your career, you'll find that each salesperson might have a different kind of sub-segment of people they work really well with. Some folks might do really well with blue collar. Another salesperson might just kill it inside of IT and white collar jobs. And so that's something to know as a sales leader as well. So I've gotten my trigger. I've gotten making this thing repeatable, fill out the spreadsheet, go through the process. Now I want to improve this. And so in the way that we're implementing this system, the improvement portion is actually implementing change. So let's say I do my spreadsheet, either as myself as a salesperson, or I do it with my team. And now I know, hey, profitability, percentage of margin. I know 1 through 5, who's a pleasure to work with and who I'd rate on the other end of the scale. What do I do with that information? What's the next step for me to really begin culling the chaff from the wheat, so to speak?
Right. So then you can rank them. And I would rank a client higher in terms of profitability based on the profit margin, even if the dollars, the actual dollars are small. Yet it may be, it may vary a little bit from business to business. In some cases, getting the net income to be high is more important than the actual profit margin.
Right.
Right. So depending on your business, your goal
is net income. Yeah.
Right. You may rank some of the financial metrics a little differently than other businesses might. But in terms of easy, the ease of working with a client, if 5 is the easiest and 1 is the hardest, then the 5s are going to be on the top. And what you can do is you'll notice who's at the bottom, and then you can come up with a strategy of do I actually want to actively fire these clients? Or do I want to just note that I'm not going to try to sell them more, or I'm not going to try to upsell them? I'm going to spend less time responding to their needs because it just doesn't pay. And you want to look at the best clients. One of the things you can ask is, because it's always easier to sell more to an existing client than to bring it to close on a new client. What is it that these top clients need that we're not addressing? So maybe So maybe
more business with these folks.
Right. Yeah. So maybe one of the things you could do is, okay, I've identified the top 10% of our client base. let's schedule time for a one-on-one with these clients over the first quarter of the next year.
Mhm.
Let's do a deep dive. Maybe we'll do a deep dive for free just to see what problems they have that we're not solving, where we might be able to help.
Right.
Right.
Love
Because
it.
you
Love
already
it.
have a
And we,
great relationship.
yeah.
Maybe there's something else you can do.
All right. So I've now put in a priority order, so to speak, on the people that I love working with, high profitability, and a lower priority on the folks I don't like working with, lower profitability. And then I can respond in turn. And obviously, what we give more of our focus to, we tend to see grow in our lives, kind of universal principles there. So I'm going to see more action out of the people that I spend more time talking with, especially if those are my high end clients, so to speak, my Rolls Royce, my Cadillac clients. So the final piece of this is the measurable part of it. And so, how do I measure whether this is actually producing a return in my business and in my sanity? Because we wouldn't take the time to rate clients as pleasure to work with, or a 5 to 1 if it didn't matter. And so, what do I begin measuring after I've run this system? I've built my spreadsheet. I've now prioritized the clients I want to do more work with, deprioritize the clients that I really want to start to eliminate from my business. How do I begin to measure the effect of this in profitability and in my sanity and time?
Right. So let's say you're doing this once a year. The second year that you do this, compare your spreadsheet to the first year and see,
Gotcha.
right, do I have fewer clients that I'm rating 1 as a percentage of my total number of clients? Do
Mm,
I have a higher fraction of clients that fall into the higher profit margin category?
hmm Gotcha. Okay, and
Right.
then
So you can,
yeah.
yeah, so you can use metrics to see what the change has been.
And then on the sanity and less anxiety side, is that something that I just kind of have to check in with myself on, or is there something else I can measure in that way? Maybe it's hours in the office, or hours responding to customer complaints, or last minute emails where their hair is on fire for something that it shouldn't be on fire on. How do I begin to really track? All right, am I if I'm putting more time into the folks I think are better to work with, am I freeing up other areas of my life for more prospecting, more family time? How do I measure that aspect?
Right. So in your profit margin, I would hope that if you have employees, you're allocating your labor to different clients.
Hmm.
And right, so in the profit margin, your labor is included. So that would identify how much time your company is spending creating that profit margin. So
Gotcha.
that's already in there. If it's not in there, um, you could do, again, it depends on your company and it depends on how you track your time, but you should definitely track your time. Like even a one person company, you should track how
Hmm.
you use your time to make money. So if you're not, one person company, you're not allocating your time in your financial software, what you can do is manually, you can identify how many hours am I spending on each client per week. And then you could include that in your spreadsheet at the end of the year and look at how much time you're spending. And you could include that in your calculation of your profit margin.
And the
Again,
tail end of
you'd be
this, of
doing it
course, is
manually.
I'm sorry, what's that?
No, so then you'd be doing it manually as opposed to, again, if you have a big company, hopefully you're doing this as
Right.
part of your financial software. But if you're a small company, you're probably not doing it or doing it all that well. So you could do it manually and just add it in.
And that's something that I think a lot of salespeople don't take the time to track, especially if they're involved at all on the customer service side or the delivery side of what it is they do. I could spend a lot of hours prospecting. I finally get a client, and then they're 100% of my focus until that contract is done, and suddenly I'm left in this spot where I don't have anything else in the pipe, so to speak. I got feast or famine revenues going on. A lot of salespeople experience this as well if they get caught up in customer service. So I think tracking clients like this, like the system that we've just laid out for folks, a brilliant way to be able to then tell retroactively, hey, did I really make the right decision in prioritizing these types of clients? Do I now have more time, better margin, better quality of life? And by doing this every year, I imagine 10 years in, if this is an annual process, I'm going to be working with the folks that I love working with, highest profitability, and it'll be more of a pleasure to go to work, I think, than it ever was in the past, because I've taken the time to consciously systemize the folks that I'm working with, the profitability of those folks, and really targeting in on the people that I want to spend my day with. Because whether we're entrepreneurs running our own businesses or in sales, we get to make that decision. And a lot of salespeople don't quite wrap their heads around that until later in their careers, unfortunately. Until they really, they wake up 40 years in and they're like, hey, I got to play golf 5 days a week and I'm making money while I'm doing it. Well, it took time to get there. I'd love it for salespeople to get there sooner. So, David, you've got a lot of great things that you're running on your own. I want to make sure people are aware of before we wrap up here. You've got Going Solo for those of the folks out there that really are thinking about, hey, do I really have what it takes to get out there and make it on my own? You provide skills, strategies, and tactics to be more successful in running your own shop, but you've also got Smashing the Plateau. So tell us a little bit about each of those podcasts that you've got going on and where to find them so people can get deeper into your world.
Yes, thank you, Sean. So you can find both podcasts at smashingtheplateau.com. And the podcasts are designed to help consultants and coaches build their business following a long career as an employed professional. Going Solo, it focuses primarily on the early stages of business building. What do you need to do right at the cusp of departure from corporate life and entry into the entrepreneurial life? And Smashing the Plateau is designed more for existing consulting and coaching businesses that are trying to make a level change.
Love it. And both of them, I know you have awesome guests on. I got to be a guest, so I'm going to say that unequivocally. You have awesome guests on your show. So make sure you're checking those out with David. And then for us here at Bulletproof Selling, make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube for these live streams. In case you can't make it live, they're all posted there immediately afterwards. And of course, the podcast that we produce out of these live streams on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere the podcast can be found under Bulletproof Selling. For more sales systems, for better pipeline performance so that you can replace hope with certainty using systems just like the one we built today, make sure you're checking out the free resources we are posting every single day of the week, constantly releasing new stuff over there at bulletproof-selling.com. So Sean Rhodes here alongside Mr. Shriner-Cahn. It has been a pleasure serving the sales community with you, David. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.
Thank you, Sean.